Hi guys. So the topic of this week, we are going to talk about the two tools for data collection in as qualitative methods when you conduct like a field work and you need to collect some data in order to answer the question under investigation. So here you have a topic and you plan for your field work, and you need to collect, as I mentioned, some information or to get some knowledge in order to in order to explain the question, and to the data would increase, the explanatory power of your methodological approach. So here you have like set of issues you need to investigate extensively and consistently. So that's why you need to collect some factual or descriptive data through like conducting this fieldwork, and this descriptive and factual information or data actually coming from individuals' concepts or definitions or their explanations and evaluations of their own social world, or that's related to the topic you're trying to, or the question you are trying to answer. So the values and the concepts of these individuals, you need to collect, the data from these individuals, and these concepts and values emerge basically from their speech and narratives. So you talk to people, you have like conversation, like interviews, or like we are focusing on interviews and focus group this week. And next week we are going to have like, discourse analysis and other forms of qualitative analysis, or an archival documents. But here it's kind of interaction between you as a researcher and the individuals. You are interested in the way they understand their social world, which is related to, for example, participation in protest, how they perceive, the way the government like treats minorities, how they perceive like, the quality of the social services the government provide, how they perceive or how they evaluate actually the social policies of their own government. So it depends on the topic you're trying to investigate or to look into. So you need to have like a conversation with the different forms with people in order to collect some data. So here the power of language is very important, because from their speech or the narrative, so you draw your data, or from the way they speak or the way they actually narrate. So you use the power of language in order to evaluate or describe or explain things that are related to your research topic. So you need like, it's not like a common conversation. So you have to talk deeply, or you have to investigate, the topic in some detail, which actually involves some probing or like follow-up questions. So you have like different forms of like how to structure your conversation, your like focus group or your interview. So we have like two types. We call it unstructured interviews and semi-structured interviews. So the unstructured interviews, so you have like a broad agenda with kind of a broad issues you need to explore across the sample or the interviewees. So you don't have a list of questions, so you just have like broad issues you need to cover. The motivations, that how people got motivated in order to take part in demonstrations or uprisings. How they coordinate efforts, how they actually arrange, how they constructed, particular organizations, or they built coalitions in order to pressure the existing regime. How actually they interacted with one another. So you have like broad issues without like, putting down, some wording for your questions. And then the semi-structured, it's like quite the opposite. So you have a list of like the key questions you need to ask repeatedly, like to ask the same question, or like to ask the same questions in the same way each time you have like an interview. And some probing for to get more information and clarification. And sometimes we call the unstructured interviews like in-depth interviews. So you have like some even for the semi-structured interviews, so sometimes it involves some in-depth questions, so you need to seek like to get more information and from participants, and you need some clarification. So that's why sometimes you do not have to stick to the list of questions you actually wrote down in the first place, and you need to come up with some other questions in order to follow up or to clarify some issues. And actually sometimes like people use in-depth interviews and they refer to semi-structured interviews as well. So make sure like people sometimes view them interchangeably. But this is like very common, like this kind of semi-structured interviews. You have like a list of questions with some follow-up and probing questions as well. So while you're preparing for a fieldwork, as I mentioned, like the structured and semi-structured, they are not used consistently. So that's why you need to yeah, it's like when you read a paper, for example, but here like you prepare for your own fieldwork. So sometimes you need to make sure how the author or like the academic paper actually analyzed the data, or they conducted the interview, in what form actually they did that. But for you, it's actually, you don't need, you have like some flexibility to change the sequence or the way you answer, the way you question or the wording of your questions, how you phrase your questions. So sometimes even if you have like a list of questions you need to cover or you need to ask, so you have to have like some sort of flexibility in order to follow up to or to clarify some other issues that might come up in the course or in the process of the interview. But all in all, we have like a general guiding principles in order to in your preparation for your fieldwork. So first of all, you have like kind of opening question. I'm going to explain this with some examples later when we talk about the semi-structured interviews and the focus groups. But here it's like, this is the general guide. You need to have like these kind of steps clear in your head while preparing for a fieldwork. So here you have like some sort of opening questions. This is like, make sure that you interview or you interact with people that you don't know. So you need kind of ice-breaking technique. So you have like to have kind of opening questions that would ease participants to get them like gently into your topic, into the focus group, or into the interview situation. So you need to think about different questions that actually would motivate or would get them to talk and to understand the purpose of your research or your style of conversation. So it might include like some background information. It's about like the geographical area or like educational background, this type of question that it might give you as well, like it might get them to talk, and it might give you kind of background information. You might use them later in order to come up with a follow-up question or clarifying one. So if you examine, for example, like if you have like an interview with people in different, local areas in order to assess the government, the social policy of the government or the local governments regarding education or healthcare, for example. So you might need to know the income level or the education background or these kind of information. You might link them up, later in order to assess to what extent, these background information or background variables affect the way they assess the government, whether or not, they were or they are members in the governing or the ruling party. So these kind of questions might help you later in order to analyze the data you will receive, or in order to put the answers into kind of a perspective. So after getting the household information, the family and household circumstances, for example, this might help to give you a context and a guide in order to ask a follow-up question later. To what extent the subsidies actually cover some expenditure, or the help some families in marginalized areas in order to improve on their living conditions, for example. So you need to have to think about these types of questions in order to as a warming up questions or motivating questions to get people into your topic. Yeah, and then after these, what you have to bear in mind as well, the opening questions, and then the sequence of the questions as well. So if you need to investigate how people participated in mass demonstrations or political protests, so you need to have some sort of sequence in the way you phrased or the way you put your questions. So you need to ask first about their experience and behavior before you get into the motivations and attitudes, because they are they treat you as a stranger, and you need to to put them at ease first in order to get them to talk. So first of all, you have to usually people like to share some experience. They talk more about their experience and some sort of circumstances and behavior, and then especially when it comes to sensitive issues. And then later they can get into the motivation and attitudes information. So if you ask first about the their behavior and the experience, while preparing, participating in some committees or grassroots committees or grassroots activities, to what extent they assess or they evaluate this kind of experience, and then their behavior during the course of the protests or the participation, how they reacted to the government repression, how they actually does different networks or reach it out to different actors or players during the process of the uprisings or the demonstrations. And then you can ask about the motivations and their attitudes during the process. Yeah, and you should have some sort of questions in order to assess or in order to know more about the initial reflections on the concepts, for example. For example, if your topic is about degree of satisfaction with the government social policies, for example, so you might have some questions in order to make sure to what extent the people understand your concept. So for example, but in a way you have to set it up in a way that it doesn't look like it's a test in the beginning. So you are not testing their information, for example. So you just need to, it's useful just to hear about their initial reflections on the concept, for example, how they see if the government, for example, applied something like conditional cash transfer, it's a program very common in Latin America. So the government offered some money for needy people or needy family, but it's conditional. So the government offers some money, but conditional that they have to go to do kind of a checkup, at some hospitals, monthly or regularly, and they have to send, in order to avoid, the dropping out from the schools. So they have to send their children to schools as well. So to what extent they are satisfied with the question? So you need to hear about the reflection about the satisfaction first. So to what extent, how do you see this, like in Brazil, for example, Bolsa Familia? How do you see? How do you evaluate the program in the beginning? Do you see it's a good idea to have your children or to send your children to school, because how this will affect their future, for example, how this will improve their chances in life? So you need to understand to what extent they are aware of different programs, to what extent they are aware about the logic of the government, or why the government enacted these programs in the first place. So you need to get more like information from or to hear about their reflections first, in order to make sure that you're talking about the same concept. For example, if you need to examine the impact or the effect of the neoliberal policies on social protests, for example, so perhaps you might have you need to focus, for example, on privatization, decreasing social welfare policies or social expenditures. So you might have something in your head, and then when you can ask some participants about their conception about neoliberal policies, for example, they can give you ideological answer. For example, it's like, it's a withdrawal, from state, from making economic policies, and then they can take you to different terrain. For example, how the state model of the development, or the Marxist model, of the state role in the economy, and this kind of intensive, intervention from the state in the economy, it would help better with the social and economic development. So anyways, you have to hear more about the reflections in order to make sure to what extent they understand the concept, how they define this, by themselves, in order to, this will help you with analyzing the data later. And then cooling down questions. It's not like we are done with the interview, so bye-bye. It's like you have to introduce them, how to get them to the end. So before we get to the final question, how do you evaluate the social program in these areas? Do you see if there are any it's kind of differences between different areas, to what extent the government is interested in your area regarding to neighboring areas, for example. And then you can go, this is the final question. So if you have anything to add about the subsidies, or about the social policies in your area, and how you contacted, for example, the member of the candidate, or the parliamentary member in your electoral district, and how they actually responded to your needs. It's these kind of questions you need to or this kind of broad lines, or the guidelines you need to bear in mind while preparing for your field work. So you should have these types of opening questions, and then to come up with this logical sequence in order to make sure you get people, you put them at ease, and you get them into your topic, and then make sure you offer some space for the reflection, and then kind of ending notes. So you have if you need to if you need to examine, for example, how people evaluate, the subsidies and the austerity policies of the government, for example, while like abolishing the subsidies and implementing austerity policies. So you have like kind of introduction first about your topic, why you're investigating this. So you have to give like an overview about your research topic, and then you need to hear more from them about the evaluation of social policies before abolishing, for example, food subsidies. So to what extent, they evaluate or they see or they actually, the government helped them before with the subsidies, and then how the austerity policies will affect their lives. And then you can ask about their initial impression about the new policies, the new social policies, and to what extent they are like aware of the repercussions of these policies, and like subsequent impact on poverty level and nutrition as well. So in order, if you need to know, like, how they responded to these policies, whether, they are aware of the long-term, consequences, of these policies for their living conditions. And then, so especially for when it comes to the focus groups, so you might you have one goal in order to have to formulate a policy recommendation. So you need to hear more about, from the interaction, as we're going to see, of people participated in the focus group. So you need to hear more about the future prospects, for or any kind of plans in order to improve on the social policies. And then the general evaluation of the social policy of the government, and this would help, with the future evaluations of the government social policy. So all these in order to generate data, in order to have some sort of contextual and descriptive data that would help with the topic, with marshalling and mastering evidence for your topic. So why you need some sort of guide in order to make sure that you cover all the dimensions you need to cover, and you collect as you get you get to the right information level that would help you with analyzing the data you collect. So you need first to design what's called topic guides. See why you need these kind of guides. It offers some flexible directions during the fieldwork process, especially if you're not if you need to travel in order to conduct this fieldwork. If you need to study something about student movements in Chile, for example, so you might need to have this kind of topic guides, because it's a long way to get there, and you need to make sure everything is planned ahead. So it's very important to design, these kind of guides that would help you during the process of the fieldwork, and with the documentation as well. So you need to have some documents you need to get back to in order to finalize your research. And you need to make sure that you offer you collect consistently the data needed to cover all the issues, all the dimensions needed for your topic. So you might have you need to specify the relevant issues that you need to cover systematically and consistently, and then how you're gonna pursue details, and on what areas you need to clarify, or you need to have follow-up questions, and how, if there is kind of an awkward silence, how you are going to break these kind of awkward situations and get people back into your interviews. So So you need to prefer to have, like, some sort of thematic